Can I live abroad with my spouse while her or his immigrant visa case is pending? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States at our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. You know, people come to us with lots of different life scenarios. Maybe they've been here in the United States and have been waiting a while for their overseas spouse to get a visa and they want to go live there. Or they've been living outside the United States for 4 or 5 years, maybe going to school or working for a nonprofit or an NGO, and they're married to a U.S. citizen, and now the decision has been made to come back and to bring the spouse with them to the United States. And people want to know, Jim, what happens if I, the U.S. citizen, or I, the green card holder, the petitioner, the person who's trying to get an immigration benefit for my loved one, for my spouse, how do I bring them to the United States? And will the fact that I live overseas hurt our chances, or will it keep my spouse from being able to get a visa? And so you have to think of how the process works, and then we'll talk about the fact that you're outside the United States and how that impacts that at various stages. So the first stage in any marriage-based immigrant visa case where you're trying to get them a green card is the filing of an I-130 petition for an alien relative. So the U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident will file an I-130 petition for their overseas spouse. And when they file that application, they need to list a United States address. So I was talking to somebody yesterday. He's been living outside the United States for 7 or 8 years, and he doesn't really have domicile in the United States. And that's really the phrase that we're talking about. Domicile is the place where you reside, the place where you live, the place that's sort of your base of operations. In law school and civil procedure, we spent a whole lot of time talking about domicile because that impacted where you could sue somebody. But in this context, domicile is, where does the petitioner live? Do they live in St. Louis, Missouri? Do they live in Cleveland, Ohio? Or do they live in Jakarta, Indonesia? And so that's really the important thing. And you don't need much to establish the domicile for purposes of the I-130. I think that you can even use the address you plan on living at when you first arrive in the United States. Now remember, they're going to lock down that address in your computer system, and so you're going to want to make sure that you pick an important address and that you do actually get mail there. And so if you're overseas and your parents still are alive, I would put their address and use that as your U.S. base of operation. So in that first stage of things at USCIS where the case is pending, you don't need to have all the connections to that city and that state that we're going to talk about in the next stage of things. So get that thing on file. It's going to take forever, especially with Trump coming back. So get the I-130 on file, have it pointed towards an address in the United States, and let that process work itself out. It might take 12 months, 14 months, 16 months, whatever. Once that's approved, then you go on to the next stage, which is the National Visa Center. And this is when you need to start thinking about reestablishing domicile in the United States. So if you've been living overseas for a long time, or if that's the time where you're planning to go stay with your spouse while this thing all plays out, I get it, because you want to be together. You still want to make sure to continue to have your domicile or to reestablish your domicile. So for somebody who's thinking about going, I would say continue to pay your taxes. Don't give up your property. Don't take everything with you. Maintain your accounts that you can afford to. Keep your library card, all that stuff, because we're going to want to show that you still have that connection to St. Louis. You still have that connection to Cleveland, wherever it is. And then for people that are already overseas, this is the time around at the National Visa Center when you start processing with the State Department, where you're getting ready for your case to be sent to an embassy overseas. This is when you want to be establishing ties back in the home country. So if you haven't been here for a while, I would say come back to your hometown. Figure out where you're going to live. Figure out what your living arrangement's going to be. Get an updated driver's license. Reestablish some connection. You don't need a ton. And you don't need it in that first stage. You just need it in the second stage. Because as we get to the National Visa Center and the embassy processing, we're going to want to establish where the beneficiary is going. And the way that I've always thought about it is the State Department wants to say to themselves, why are we going to give your spouse a green card, an immigrant visa, to the United States and to live there if you yourself don't live there? So you have to establish some bare domicile requirements like a lease or driver's license and trips back and forth. If there's kids involved, enrolling them in school, those kinds of things. So it's totally okay to be living overseas when you file the I-130. it's totally okay to continue to live there until they get their embassy interview. I think it's actually good marital evidence that you're living abroad, but you need to maintain that connection. And if you've been living abroad for a long time, you need to reestablish that domicile at some point after the I-130 is approved and before they have their embassy interview. Does this make sense? I hope it does. We love working on these cases. We handle a lot of marriage-based immigrant visa cases. We'd love to work on yours. If you want to hire us, give us a call, 314-961-8200. Email us, info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. If you're just looking for free resources, we have a bunch of those. You can follow us on TikTok @immigrationhacking. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on the alerts, and that way you'll get a little notice whenever we go live. We also have our Facebook group, which is called Immigrant Home, and you can go in there and talk about your immigration journey. And then we go live on YouTube and Facebook 3 or 4 times a week. If you look for the Immigration Answers Show, you'll find us there. Also, you can text us the word show to 314-470-3300. And if you text the word SHOW, you'll get an alert whenever we go live. And you'll be able to come into the waiting room and ask me an immigration question for free. Thanks so much, and have a great day.